Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. This week we move to Chengdu and take a look at World Games. What unique sports does it cover? What is the World Games' role in the global sports landscape? For this chat, I'm joined here with my fantastic co-hosts Tian Yu and Brandon Yates. Alright, the 12th edition of the World Games is underway in Chengdu, China. This might be a little bit unfamiliar sports event to most people. The World Games was founded in 1981, quite young, and it's the most significant multi-sport events outside the Olympics, and covers a lot of non-Olympic events, like, for example, billiards, frisbee, and tug of war. Of course, in history, some of the World Games sports have been included to the Olympic program, most recently breakdancing and American flag football. Like the Olympics, the World Games takes place every 4 years, and this time in Chengdu, nearly 4,000 athletes from 116 countries and regions are competing across 34 sports. So Tianyu, if we take a look at what's going on at the World Games in Chengdu, a lot of action has been ongoing. And is there any particular competition or moment or story and games that caught your attention so far?
Yeah, of course. I just read this story about two frisbee players. They're from Estonia. The female player is called Christine Latz and her husband. And they aren't just casual players. Like they're like top level in frisbee. They are the kind of people who can make a frisbee do things that you wouldn't imagine. So after their matches here in Chengdu, instead of just going off to do some sightseeing around the city, they were invited to a local park for a demo game with some amateur players from the city. And this wasn't like some big official event, but instead it was just a bunch of people gathered around, laughing, playing, and throwing the disc around. So the Chinese amateurs were super excited about this, because a lot of them said it was the first time they had ever been in touch or on the same field with a professional player. And you could see how much it meant to them. And the Lat couple talked about how touched they were by the warm welcome they received here. The people coming up to say hi, giving them presents, asking for tips on frisbee, and just giving them presents. So they said Chengdu had such a friendly and laid-back vibe that they're already planning to come back for a proper trip. So I think, to me, that's exactly the magic of sports. It's not just about medals and records. It's about moments like this, where a game turns into a bridge between people who, a few hours earlier were total strangers from different sides of the world. And I think that's pretty brilliant to me.
When I first heard of the game Frisbee, I thought it's a dog game. But it turns out it's a very competitive and complicated human game.
Human game, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that in Frisbee games, the judge is the athletes themselves.
Yeah.
Fascinating to me to know that fact. So I guess it's the same with other sports at World Games. Sometimes even you've never even heard of them.
Yeah.
Like, what is fistball? What is floorball? I've never heard them. So, Brandon, anything impressive at the Chengdu World Games so far for you?
Well, I can tell you my dogs are better at frisbee than some of these frisbee athletes that we've seen so far. It's definitely one of their favorite games. But yeah, I mean, I'm also, with that game in particular, I wasn't particularly familiar with it, as a competitive sport. But then when you actually do get to see some of it and some of the highlights, it really is something spectacular. But I think, that is what is special about these World Games and all past and future World Games. We'll get into that later. But I mean, from my side of things, the biggest international talking point I would say at this stage is again, once again a spectacular Chinese opening ceremony, and the Chengdu World Games definitely did not disappoint. I mean, that Tianfu roof, for the opening ceremony, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. Such as a spectacular, like, modern take on a traditional sort of layout, if that makes sense. So to see something like that being showcased on the world stage was absolutely amazing. Across the lake, that was definitely a standout. And the cauldron being lit on the lake.
Yeah.
That was really spectacular. Again, another. I think there seems to be a Chinese massive opening ceremony tradition, or not tradition, but kind of blueprint, I would say, where there's definitely a push to showcase the immense history that China has that I think the world is already kind of aware of. And combining that with all of the innovation that China is currently experiencing right now, and there always seems to be, great efforts to combine those two elements in opening ceremonies because I think that is the way that, certainly for me at least, I think that's the way the big eye-opening moments when you arrive in China is that, you really are presented with so many contrasts in terms of the immense, far-reaching, deep history that China has, along with the crazy amounts of innovation and tech and development that's happening in China. And I think obviously being in Beijing. And I think Chengdu is another great example of that. And I like what Tianyu mentioned there, the fact that, Chengdu has those chilled, laid-back vibes. And I remember when we were in China, when I was chatting to you about what Chengdu was like, that's kind of something that you said to me. It's a little bit more laid back. People are a little bit more
Yeah.
relaxed, and it's like a more, sort of casual city compared to like the hustle and bustle of Beijing.
Yeah.
The opening ceremony kind of detailed that as well, which was quite interesting. And it seems like a lot of the highlights coming out of the games are also kind of highlighting the more laid back, relaxed environments of Chengdu, which is quite interesting to see.
All right. On Chinese internet, a surprising trending topic of the World Games is actually a judge in Latin dance. Yes, the World Games has dance contests as well.
Yep.
Sergius Sinkins from Latvia went viral in China like overnight. Videos online showed a blonde, tall gentleman in a tailored black suit recording scores on the sidelines of the Latin dance competition. Like a supermodel with a near perfect head to body ratio, netizens would call him a walking Greek statue.
Wow.
Some even joked that his legs are too long for camera frame. And more captivating is his dynamic presence during the Latin dance competitions. He would unconsciously sway to the music. Very elegant. So,
That sounds charming.
yeah, definitely the World Games has made him a celebrity in China this time. And to me, the most thrilling part of the World Games this time in Chengdu must be the opening ceremony when the cauldron was lit. I mean, fire appeared from the top of the water fountain, which turned out to be the cauldron itself.
Fascinating.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, are you kidding me? Fire was lit in water, and the water fountain is on fire. What's going on? I've never seen something like that. And I recommend everyone watch that clip. Just so unreal. China never fails in opening ceremonies,
Yeah.
but it seems like this time Chengdu has made it to the
Another
another level.
level,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, before we move on, here's a quick review of the biggest sports headlines in China and around the world for the past week. Paris Saint-Germain rallied from 2 goals down to beat Tottenham Hotspur 6-5 on penalties after a 2-2 draw in regular time, winning their first UEFA Super Cup. The victory made the Ligue 1 side the first French club to lift the trophy in the competition's history. Facing a 2-0 deficit, substitute Lee Kang-in fired a stunning strike from the edge of the box to pull 1 goal back before Gonzalo Ramos headed in a stoppage time equalizer. Nuno Mendes converted a decisive kick to seal the shootout win for PSG. Crystal Palace won its first Community Shield, defeating Liverpool 3-2 in a penalty shootout after twice coming from behind in regular time. Goalkeeper Dean Henderson saved the shot by Alexis McAllister and Harvey Elliott. Palace manager Oliver Glasner praised his goalkeeper.
A lot of work behind it. For example, the day before the meeting in the hotel with the analysts, with his goalkeeping coach, they went through all the penalty takers from Liverpool, and he's well prepared, and then he has the confidence, I think, that he can save the penalties. He showed it.
The Community Shield is often referred to as the curtain raiser for the new season in the Premier League, which gets underway on the weekend. The Court of Arbitration for Sport has rejected Crystal Palace's appeal over their demotion from the Europa League to the UEFA Conference League. European football's governing body determined that as of March the 1st, Jean Textor had control or influence in Paris and French club Lyon at the same time. They are unable to compete in the same European competition, and Lyon held on to the Europa League spot by virtue of their higher league position. Nottingham Forest are set to replace Palace in the second-tier Europa League. The Spanish La Liga is closer to playing a regular season game in the United States. The Spanish Football Federation has approved a request for the match between Villarreal and Barcelona in Miami on December 20th. The federation will now seek approval from governing bodies UEFA and FIFA. Swedish Olympic champion Armand Duplantis has set his 13th world record in men's pole vault. The 25-year-old cleared 6.29 meters on his second attempt in Budapest on Tuesday. Duplantis surpassed the world record he set in Stockholm in June by 1 centimeter. Chinese Super League side Chengdu Rongchen beat Bangkok United 3-0 at home to earn a place in the AFC Champions League elite for the first time. The revamped tournament will start with 24 teams in the league stage that kicks off on September the 15th. Chinese center Li Yuezhu contributed a career-high 20 points in the Dallas Wings 81-80 victory of the Indiana Fever in the Women's National Basketball Association. Playing in her third WNBA season, Li posted an average of 5.7 points and 4.7 rebounds. Welcome back. Apart from the opening ceremony, Chengdu has so much more to offer for the World Games with its venues, infrastructure, and unique culture. So, Tianyu, you went to Chengdu 2 years back for the World University Games, which is in a similar scale with the World Games this time. So, what makes Chengdu a special host city for such events?
Yeah, like you said, I got to be in Chengdu in 2023 for the World University Games, and it was an amazing experience. And I think, honestly, once you've been there, you would fall in love with the city just like I did. And like Brandon just mentioned, what I love most about Chengdu is the chill vibe there. It's like it got this slow, relaxed, laid-back pace you don't always get in big cities like Beijing or Shanghai. You will see people spending hours in tea houses just sipping tea and chatting about what's going on in their daily life.
And playing mahjong.
Yeah, playing mahjong. And also there are parks everywhere, a lot of green spaces, and you'll find locals having picnics, playing music, or even just dance in the open air. So you can tell us how chill the vibe is. And also, man, you got to mention the food there when talking about Chengdu. We're never talking about Chengdu. You know, you can't talk about Chengdu without talking about its hot pots. And the city's like the holy land for Sichuan cuisine. It's spicy. It's already got me, mouth-watering. It's flavorful, and for a foodie like me, it's almost impossible to stop eating. And
my saliva is trailing down my mouth.
Yeah, like from street snacks to fancy restaurants, it just got everything. And here's the thing: even with that laid-back atmosphere, Chengdu's infrastructure is top level. The subway literally connects every corner of the city, and it's super easy to get around. And also it has two big and very busy airports, so that means just whether you are athlete, an official, or just a tourist, is logistics are never a problem. And also for the World Games, the organizers have been incredible. The volunteers are everywhere. They're like in train stations, airports, subway stations. They're ready to help athletes and visitors in whatever way they can. So it's that mix of hospitality and efficiency that makes Chengdu quite a special host and very capable host. So I think the success here of the World Games means a lot for the event, because it shows that if you combine genuine hospitality, great infrastructure, and a city that has its own unique flavor, you can create an experience people will never forget and people will remember for their lifetime. And other host cities could definitely take notes from Chengdu on how to make a global event that feel both world-class and personal at the same time.
Yeah, there's a saying in China about the Chengdu city. you don't go to Chengdu when you are young.
Yeah.
Because you would lose all your motivation with that quite light and chill atmosphere in the city. And I doubt if the athletes would put up their best performance in Chengdu with that atmosphere in the city. Brandon, we mentioned that the World Games has less reputation than the Olympics, maybe. So there might be fewer expectations from sports fans like us. But this time, Chengdu has definitely held a very successful event so far in different areas. So what does this mean to the World Games?
As it continues to be a success in Chengdu, I think it is, incredibly important for the games, because I think, like I said earlier, the more and more attention that is placed on an event like this, and the more and more athletes and sports that are able to kind of succeed on a platform that they wouldn't ordinarily get, which only sort of really comes around every 4 years. I think it's firstly, it's a very important platform for a city like Chengdu to showcase what it offers to the world. And, as we've already mentioned, we've seen that with, some of the highlights just in terms of what the city itself offers, but also the infrastructure, and the ability to showcase a global spectacle like this. I think that's been very important for the city. But in terms of, the sports themselves, having a platform like the World Games, I think is incredibly important for the growth of their sport, and potentially for the exposure for certain athletes that might only, potentially be competing at an amateur level. An event like this may be able to get them, more and more opportunities to create revenue for themselves from their sport, or for their team, or, as individuals, or for the sport overall. A lot of casual viewers that might be not necessarily that invested in traditional sports, that tend to stay away from sports. So, for example, I often touch on rugby, and, there's a lot of people that kind of look at rugby and they think, oh, it's too complicated, or I don't understand it. And people are so passionate and intense about it that they kind of stay away from watching it. Whereas the World Games, don't get me wrong, I mean, these sports are incredibly competitive and people take them seriously and they want to win. But there definitely seems to be a more inclusive element and a more relaxed vibe attached to some of these sports that we see at the World Games, particularly sports that maybe, like we've mentioned, aren't featured at the Olympics, or are a little bit more creative and expressive, as opposed to, intensely physical or competitive, or, incredibly intricate in terms of the rules involved. So I think that the success of the World Games is definitely going to make sports overall, I think, a little bit more inclusive, and maybe make some casual viewers of sports a little bit more passionate about sports, and it gives them a greater variety of sports to potentially get excited about.
Yes, without World Games, I don't know some of the sports even exists in the world. And according to the World Games Association president, this time Chengdu hosted the best ever World Games so far in the event history. I mean, I heard this a lot from participants across different whatever sports events held in China, like the Asian Games, like Asian Winter Games, even the World Military Games. All I heard from them is it's like the Olympics.
Yeah.
I think it's the best comments you give to the organizers of non-Olympic events.
Yeah.
As we mentioned, the World Games has so many unique and sometimes even odd sports like cheerleading. I thought cheerleaders are supposed to be on the sidelines of a competition, but this time they took the center stage in Chengdu. And lifesaving. Is it a competition about who saves the drowning man first? I don't get it. Is it a sport? And drone racing, I like it very much. Competitors fly drones in the air in an air race to, cross sections and dodge barriers in the air. It's so cool and looks so cool. So Tianyu, among those interesting sports and World Games, if you have to pick one to practice, what would that be?
Well, honestly, as someone who's clearly not a gym guy, I'm going to stay away from things like jiu-jitsu, triathlon, or rugby, because I will get crushed so fast that you might see me ending up in an ambulance after the game. But I have to say, tug of war might be the sport that I might get behind.
Okay.
Because in that sport, no one can really tell if you're actually pulling hard. Or just you're making the struggle face.
You can just pretend to be in the game.
You just, plant your feet grip the rope and let the teammates with actual muscles and the weight to do the heavy lifting, and you can still walk away with a medal while pretending you just went all out in a game. So that's my kind of strategy.
Okay.
But jokes aside, if I were feeling brave, I think powerboating and wakeboarding looks very amazing. It just looks so fun and exciting that I would probably give it a go. But I would probably, spend more time falling into the river than actually riding it. But at least I would go down in style.
Okay. Look, that's two sports I've never heard of.
Yeah.
Brendan, any sports and World Games that interest you?
Well, there's a couple of things there. First of all, Tianyu, don't worry, rugby is a sport for everybody. If you look at the Springbok national team, of course, our forwards are absolutely massive. You get guys that are 2 meters tall, 140 kilograms, but also some of our best players are like on the wings. They are, like 5'6", weigh like, less than 80 kilos, but they're incredibly fast and incredibly agile. So I think that's something that, maybe people that don't necessarily watch rugby regularly, if they're watching rugby now, maybe that's something that they can see, that it really is a sport for everybody. And Yang Guang, some of the sports you mentioned there, I know cheerleading, I also had a similar kind of attitude towards cheerleading, but I can tell you, one of the most popular movies in South Africa or in the world in the early 2000s was called Bring It On, which also features these massive cheerleading competitions that happen in the United States. It's normally like high school or university cheerleading squads, and the level of competition that stretches out across the country is absolutely massive. And the routines and the competitiveness and the athleticism involved in cheerleading is absolutely incredible. So that also is a massive sport. And lifesaving, I was a qualified lifesaver when I was at high school, and I also didn't know that it was like a sport. But I can tell you, there's, at least in South Africa, there was provincial lifesaving tournaments that took place every year. And I played rugby for many years, and I'm telling you, lifesaving was, for me at least, was the sporting element of it was harder than rugby, because they come up with these like specific tests that really test you on a variety of levels. So there's like distance running and swimming combination events. There's sprint events where they test your sprint speed, when you have to like lie face down on the sand, jump up and sprint to get to a flag before your other competitor. So even though lifesaving is about rescuing people in distress, the testing that's involved to be the best version of yourself as a lifesaver is very, very intense. So I think keep your eyes on those lifesaving and cheerleading, because there's, like you guys have mentioned, there's a lot more to it than people expect.
Yeah.
But I think something that has always been not necessarily a renowned sport in terms of like featuring on ESPN or being an Olympic sport, or something that people watch regularly, but it's something that every year there seems to be some sort of crazy trending video online or on social media that involves parkour. And I think that's always something that's very, very interesting to watch. I mean, some guys online take it to lengths that I think are really death-defying, and I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. Some of the venues that they try out and the stunts that they do are, to try and get worldwide attention is just absolutely brutal and just insane.
Yeah.
But I think just general, relative, I don't think there is any totally safe parkour, but I think, relatively safe competitive parkour is also something very exciting to watch, that I think obviously, Chengdu is blessed with many outdoor, beautiful nature spaces, but I think there are a lot of cities around the world that don't offer massive, green spaces and are very, built up and don't have much space. And I think parkour is a great sport that showcases that, you really can be competitive and active and, creative in any space, no matter how limited you are in terms of space or green spaces available. So for me, that's something really exciting to watch. And Tianyu, I like what you mentioned there about tug of war, because there are so many guys pulling on the rope. If you're in the middle, just kind of making like really expressive faces and pretending to try your best, you can kind of get away with doing absolutely nothing. So if you want to, if you, for example, if you're a high school kid on sports day and you want to take part in a sport, but you don't, or look like you're taking part in a sport but don't really want to do anything, then maybe suggest tug of war. put yourself in the middle and just pretend to do something, and then maybe you can enjoy your lunch afterwards without being too tired.
Yeah.
Right. We don't need you in the tug of war team, right? Jokes aside, I think, the mainstream sports like swimming, athletics, basketball, for those sports, the Olympics is the biggest stage. But how about other, smaller sports, less known sports? You can't put them in the Olympics all together at once. So then comes the World Games. I think for those athletes practicing sports like floorball or tug of war, the World Games is where they can compete on the global stage and showcase the charm of the sport to the international audience. So in that sense, I think the World Games is a great sports event that makes the sports world evergreen. So Tianyu, how do you think events like the World Games contribute to the global sports ecosystem, especially for those sports outside the Olympic mainstream?
Yeah, I think events like the World Games are a huge deal for sports that don't usually get the spotlights, in the Olympics. Sports like you guys mentioned, korfball, squash, or flying disc. These aren't traditionally mainstream sports, but at the World Games, they are front and center, and that exposure can be very important to them. So, take sport climbing as an example. It was part of the World Games way before the Olympics ever thought about it. And the buzz it created in the event actually in those early years really helped push it through, towards Olympic inclusion. It was also the same with karate. It's been a World Games regular for decades, and it eventually made it to the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. So yeah, I think even for sports that may never be Olympic events like ultimate frisbee, parkour, this stage gives them a platform to just show off how exciting and competitive they can be. So it's a chance for athletes to compete internationally and for fans to just to discover something new. The World Games aren't just a sideshow; they're like a launch pad. They help niche sports get noticed, build fan bases, and in some cases even open the door to Olympics.
Right. Maybe we can call it the curator for the Olympic sports. He taught me so much more about the sports I've never heard of before. And altogether, they truly show the diversity in the sports world. Yeah. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.